All right, guys. Today we got Dustin Peugeot. There's a lot that I could say about him. I've known him for way more years than I want to, um, and and we've kind of followed a very similar path across our careers, and have a lot of cool things in common, and have a lot of things that we don't have in common. But he's got a great story about his journey and how he jumped from one thing to the next. Part of it because he had to, and part of it because he wanted to. And the business that he's built and why he's built it, and how he's done it the right way. It's a really, really cool story. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, so today we're joined by Mr. Dustin Peugeot. And he and I were roommates in college for the best 12 months of his life, and we have been running in similar circles over the course of what is now 25 years. Right, been in similar orbits.
Yeah, that's a long time.
When you put it that way, it sucks. A native of Eden, Ohio, born and raised, star quarterback.
Town of 27.
Yeah, all around Hellraiser, and the owner of the Matrix Trade Institute.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully we can say something that keeps people listening.
No, I think we just said it. They all just tuned out right after.
Yeah,
right after that.
The world's shortest podcast.
That's right. That's right. So with that, why don't you give us kind of an idea of how you got to where you are now. So run through it.
Yeah, proud graduate of the University of Alabama, along with Gail, and ended up in Ford Motor Company's marketing orbit, which I parlayed into 16 years in the retail Ford business. And in 2008, when the bottom fell out of the industry, I thought I was running a Ford dealership. And what I quickly learned when people quit buying cars was that Ford dealership had been running me. And I had to spend the next 8 years of my life understanding what that big area in the back with all the lifts was called the service department. And, for the next 8 years of my career, I realized that all the people that talk too much and wear those fancy sport coats could brag about how they sell cars. We started to approach it from fixed ops because that's where all the difference is made. And now, fast forward to 2023, it feels a lot like 2008, and people are realizing that they have to get serious about fixed ops. And as a whole, the industry's been pretty fat, pretty lazy, and pretty oblivious to what it really takes to grow and develop a service department, because generally it's just easier to bitch that millennials and Gen Zs don't want to be auto mechanics, and blame trade schools and iPhones for the problems of the trade production shortage, instead of actually look within and figure out better ways to solve that problem. So we got into the business about 5 years ago of finding a better way to solve that problem. So Matrix Trade Institute just recently got ASE accredited, which they make a lot harder than we realized going in, but that's a good thing. And now we do auto mechanical training, collision repair, technician training, and are getting into some technologies that are really designed to help the industry more efficiently, better, and grow themselves. And we're just one small partner that can feed into that. So that's kind of how we got to where we are. And anybody who's in the game knows that it's not a riddle that's been solved, but we wake up every day and try to get a little bit better at it.
So for the one person that may listen to this, fixed ops being fixed operations, which in a car dealership, your variable operations are your new and used car sales, and your fixed operations are the service, oil changes, brakes, alignments, collision if it's there, all that stuff. would fall under that umbrella. And the reason why that's so important is because you're going to buy a car once every maybe even 10 years now, unless you're a leaser or something. Cars last a really long time, but you're going to service it consistently. And so really smart dealership operators know that the money is in servicing the vehicles, not so much selling them. Now, obviously, you need what they call units in operation, or you got to sell cars to service them, or you could just be a service center. But that you're gonna do really well in terms of creating a healthy dealership ecosystem by focusing the bulk of what you do in service. And so, what's crazy is that they're in automotive is that almost all general managers that I've run into, and I'm sorry to call all you guys out, but you're so focused on the sales piece and none of you are focused on the service piece, and you don't invest in the service piece. And it never made any sense. Right? You're over here, chasing a light show, and over here you've got you've got everything you need to have a healthy dealership that makes a lot of money and gives a lot of jobs to people and creates a lot of security, and you ignore it. And it's never made that much sense.
Most managers of baseball teams used to play baseball, and therefore if somebody's slacking, they can see that. If they give them a poor excuse as to why they aren't performing, the manager has the ability to look them in the eye and say, who you kidding there? That manager has had to become a manager in AAA and AA, and usually wasn't a great player, but was a great student of the game until they got the chance to manage, in this analogy, a Major League Baseball team. But what happens in most service departments or in most dealerships with general managers is the management team comes up through the sales function based on their personality and their ability to deal with people. And ultimately, when you're asking more of a service department, usually the people in charge don't have the ability to call bullshit on a technician or on a service manager. They're basically just at the mercy of whatever that excuse is that day. And, to engage in an argument or a headbutting contest, as the general manager of a dealership, you're going to win every argument you get into. But the problem is if you win the argument and you got to fire somebody, then you just got to replace them. So you tend to just have a conversation, then walk away and go back up to the side of the dealership where nobody's going to argue with you and hope that it gets better. And that's about 80% of operators in the industry. Service managers are generally advisors who perform the best, that were good with people. And sometimes they're technicians who, were more type A than type B, who had a lot of knowledge that aspired to get into a service management role. But rarely are they trained in management or are they trained in training. And so the two things that can grow the department sustainably are usually two of the most lacking fundamental skills in that side of the building. And when you couple that with most service departments kind of operate like a fire department. Everybody shows up on time. They do their best to risk their lives and save as many people as they can and do it in the best, most responsible way. And at the end of the day, they're exhausted. They put the hoses where they're supposed to go, and they put their boots at the bottom of the pole, and they stand around, crack a beer, and say, we got to quit doing this. Tomorrow we're going to focus on fire prevention. And everybody agrees. They all high five. They decide they're going to get to work earlier the next day, and they're going to whiteboard how to start really getting good at fire prevention. And they show up a half hour early the next day, and right when they get ready to start writing on the board, guess what happens? The bell rings, and we repeat the same insanity. And and everybody's answer to the technician shortage or building a service department or how are we going to grow the next generation of technicians is, well, we're going to have a mentorship program and we're going to have the best minds in the dealership train them. And that's not a bad theory. Some people get it to work. But if you're really looking why the industry's got such a problem when it comes to labor shortage, management shortage, technician shortage, it's because by and large, we have old firefighters trying to train young firefighters on fire prevention while they're battling a general alarm fire. And we wonder why we're in the predicament that we're in. So instead of addressing that differently, we just bitch that there aren't enough people that want to work with their hands anymore because Steve Jobs screwed them all up with the iPhone.
You say this as you're scrolling. You know the problem with people these days. They're on their phones too much. Um, I think your point about there's 2 points you made. One about that I think every industry sort of suffers from this. You take your star salesperson and you move them into management, not because that they're good managers, but because they succeeded here, and it ends up hurting your company. Typically in two ways, right? You lost your best salesperson, and now you made a really bad manager. and that,
Yep.
and I think in automotive, it's always really clear that happens a lot. And I don't think I ever really considered the second part of that, which makes a ton of sense, which is you're asking someone to grow something that they don't understand, and they're essentially, I don't want to say held hostage, but the person that they're relying on to help them grow it maybe doesn't want to do it, or is happy with the size that it is. It doesn't want to have to go through training people and dealing with shaking the boat up and, having to hire new people and all that stuff. So honestly, that's a really fair point that makes a lot of sense, because you just sort of like, well, let me just focus on what I know and keep this going the way that it is, and I'll let him do his job.
If I'm busy all day and exhausted and nobody questions that, then I have the perfect excuse for not innovating or doing anything different. And if you press me too hard, I'll just go answer one of the 20 ads where somebody will pay me a lot more money to do the same job in the same amount of chaos. And so employers, general managers, operators really don't have any leverage. If we're just talking about fixed ops today, if they're being honest with themselves. And what our organization tries to do is give them 2 leverage points. We'll make sure that your people get upskilled quickly so that they know they're on a career path, and we give them the type of training required to keep them in the industry and make money. All you have to do is blink your eyes for a couple of days while they come get the skill, and then be willing to let them utilize that skill to your benefit. Let me make another bad baseball analogy. I'm going to spend a few grand to send Gail to a bunting clinic because we're tired of leaving runners on third base in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, and we're not going to make the playoffs. So we send Gail to Texas, and he, gets thrown 1,000 pitches over 4 days, and by the end of that camp, he can lay one down the line, and he's got some tired old legs, but some soccer DNA, and he can get to first base, and he can move the runner. Gail gets back from bunting school, and a week later, it's the bottom of the 9th. There's a runner on third. You got nothing but pitchers in the dugout, and I don't know if Gail's ready. We're not going to let him go to the plate, but insanity happens all the time in our industry. People go to OEM training. People get sent to training. They come back from the training. There's the fire. And we're wondering why the fire chief, who is fighting the fire, isn't making good strategic decisions about where the young firefighters are being deployed during the fire.
Why aren't they letting them use their skills?
Well, because they've got 3 other buddies that are going to get pissed if they don't get that gravy alignment job. They've got an existing stable of technicians that really kind of like their gig, and God forbid I piss off my 4 horses to give the young colt an opportunity to increase my production capacity and grow. And therein lies the never-ending dichotomy. We're pleasing people that aren't going to be there forever, that cost more money because we're terrified of losing them. We are not confident that by adding someone to the production cycle, that even if one of the people gets sideways or leaves, that over the long haul will increase our productivity. And, oh, by the way, we're all busy as hell, so we'll deal with it tomorrow. And we wonder why national statistic, ASE, since 2016, this has not changed. It's only gotten worse. 2/3 of the people that graduate from a post-secondary, I'm going to be an auto mechanic or I'm going to be a body shop technician, college level, post-high school program, are no longer in the automotive repair industry in 11 months.
What's causing that?
They get a job in a fire department and the smoke never stops and they get tired of wheezing. I mean, the industry has a retention problem. We don't know how to onboard someone, put a training plan in front of them, execute against that training program while we're running a business, and then trust the training and put them in the production cycle. Instead, we're just hoping that Earl, who has bad knees but has a lot of knowledge and doesn't turn many hours anymore, is training every person the same way in the same cadence in a way that they feel like they're on a track, they're valued, they're learning the skills, they're putting those skills to work, therefore they're making more money, and therefore they're growing. And oh, by the way, what I just described, that's what keeps them off of Indeed, away from Amazon, getting poached by another 4 dealers who are going to say something really clever in a recruiting ad and do absolutely nothing different. And I'm talking about 80% of the industry. I could tell you some great 20%er stories of some innovative operations, but 80% get this really wrong 100% of the time.
So, of all your optimism you have of the automotive fixed ops industry,
I'm optimistic. There's just lots of opportunity. Put it that way.
That's right. That's right.
And I've made, by the way, every mistake that I'm citing here today, and just decided to take a run at building a business that helps dealers have a solution that is different than the one that they've tried and failed with before.
So how many people are you training a month right now?
Well, we onboard between 15 and 25 auto mechanics every 10 weeks. So we're in a lesser number on the collision side for two reasons. There's less interest, or it's less popular to want to fix mangled cars than it is to tune up non-mangled cars. We started our collision program after our auto program, but let's say that we're trying to train as close to a couple hundred kids a year as possible, and then the industry sends us their employees 1 week at a time to learn specific skills, aka the bunting analogy. So that if I can change oil, but I can't do alignments after 4 days at Matrix on the employer's dime, now I can come back and I can do alignments in half an hour when the dealership pays an hour. And now I'm 200% efficient. The dealer can do more alignments and everybody wins. What's
the max capacity you think you guys could handle right now in terms of a year of training people?
Oh my gosh. I think that if we trained people from the industry 40 weeks out of the year, we could train, we could probably train 1,000 in that model in a year. And I think that we could probably double the number of people that we put through our 20-week program. Certainly not an excuse, but a real factor in our growth in the last 4.5 years was 2.5 of those were slightly inconvenienced by a pandemic. But, there's a trade shortage, and we're trying, like everybody else, to help it be cool to learn a trade and not go into debt and do cake stands like we did for 4 years.
That's right. That's right. One of my nephews, when he was in Scouts in Atlanta, they took him to the Porsche experience there, and they were trying to recruit those kids to be mechanics, Porsche mechanics and Lambo mechanics. And I mean, they were telling them it's a $150,000 a year job if you can learn to be a Porsche mechanic.
Any mechanic job can be a 6-figure job if you learn how to make money, learn how to be efficient, get taught the right way, and get the type of foundation that makes you excited and optimistic and energetic in pursuing that trade. Because there is a ton of work to be done, and the wages are climbing. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, the lazy approach is to just overpay for somebody who's willing to leave for a couple extra dollars an hour. Usually, free agents that leave every 2 years for more money aren't the most conducive when it comes to corporate culture. No. What they don't do is invest that time and money in growing the next crop. There's a reason that the oldest professional sports league makes incredible use of the collegiate game, then graduates them to rookie ball, then graduates them to single A, then graduates them to double A, then graduates to triple A, and then puts them in the front line where the customers are paying the money. For some reason, the automotive industry thinks that they can just hire somebody out of high school and expect them to be an A-level master mechanic in 2 years, but doesn't want to pay them until they are. And that's the aggregate development program. And we wonder why not enough people want to be mechanics. Porsche, Audi, Ford, General Motors, they all have programs. They all put money against it. But we all know that if you run an Applebee's, you're not a great restaurant just because Applebee's gives you the franchise. It's who shows up every day, who's managing the cooks, who's managing the waitresses, who's managing the waiters and the bartenders. It's what happens every day that determines whether or not people are performing and growing.
So, okay, so we've talked about what you're doing now. Let's kind of talk about the future of what you guys are looking at doing, and what do you see or growth opportunities for you guys?
I think what we've learned is we can be the best school. We can provide people with the best possible hands-on education so that they have the greatest potential once they get on the job. But the industry really needs to revolutionize the way that it shares its knowledge with its employees so that they can really affect retention. In today's world, retention is a byproduct of feeling connected to the employer, understanding the career path, getting the feedback and instant training and gratification that we've all learned to expect from Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and DoorDash. And if we don't think this next generation is going to assimilate their expectations with their job experience, then we're slow to adapt. Big companies that spend a lot of money on their employee experience have figured this out. Your average retail automotive dealer or body shop is maybe as an industry not as quick to adopt. And so we're developing technologies that allow short form video, because in my opinion, anything longer than 3 minutes, you already lost me, over a mobile device, because 80% of all usage, probably higher, is done via mobile device, that allows people to practice, whether it be word tracks or processes, into the comfort, convenience, and in many cases, the privacy of their own device so that they feel prepared to provide good information to their customers. And it's shocking how many learning management systems aren't natively mobile, aren't linear and simple, and are trying to boil the ocean with their feature set. And then what we said is that's all good and great for the learner who wants to grow, use technology the way they use TikTok to perform better and make money. But the reality is that most employees are only going to do what they have to do to stay in the good graces of their employer. And so we needed to find a way to involve overly worked, overly burdened, and oft undertrained in relation to management and executing a career path managers to play a significant role in the process of development without it taking any of their time as well. So, we have a platform that holds the manager accountable just for watching the effort that their employees are making. And we've designed it in a way where they can do it while they're walking from the cashier's office back to their desk and make a meaningful impact on what that employee is trying to learn. And then we took our technology one step farther and we said, well, who decides on technology? Who ultimately can see the benefit to better trained, more retainable employees than the owner? This person is probably the least involved in the day-to-day, but most inclined to look at the impact of training and career development as an essential function of their business. They just don't have a lever to pull to make that happen, because if they start pulling too hard on whatever lever they have, they're effectively stopping the productivity of their business on that day. Yeah. And so we see this counterproductive friction point. So, our approach to that technology is when the owner looks at their app, what managers are keeping up on training and which ones aren't. And if you see somebody who's red, not green, what people that work for them aren't keeping up with required training or occasionally doing a role play when they're asked to. And now you're 2 clicks into an app as an owner, and you know what people are determining whether that manager is on pace or off pace, and you can see the work that they aren't pointing in. I give the owner ability to look at their business from a training and engagement perspective in less than 60 seconds. So then when they walk through their business and talk to that manager or one of their employees, and they already have the lens to see who actually showed up to the gym and the lever to say, I'm not here to tell you how to be a technician. I'm not here to tell you how to be a service manager. I am here to tell you that Eddie, Susie, and Tom ignored the hell out of you when you gave them material that if they took about a minute to digest it would have made them more money. And that Gail and Dusty do it every time, and that's why they're overperforming. Maybe we could start to approach trading from a lead indicator and effort standpoint. Good analogy. If you count your calories and burn calories at the rate that the app tells you that you should, you don't have to wonder if you're going to be lighter in 30 days.
That's right. Yep.
If we just talk about being skinny every single day and don't actually do anything, pretty good chance at the end of the month we're going to be a little bit pissed what the scale tells us.
Yep.
So how do we give ownership the ability to stay involved and manage the effort of ongoing training and coaching in a way that doesn't take more than a minute or two of everybody's time on a daily basis, and hand that to businesses as our value add? You're a former advertising guy, Gail. If you go to 100 dealers, former automotive advertising guy, I think you've divested now. I give you 100 car dealerships who spend in aggregate $500 million a year in retail advertising, saying, buy this truck at this payment in the next 30 days. And you poll their 1,000 salespeople and find out how many of them actually knew what that advertisement was going to say before it actually hit the airwaves. I'll show you a bunch of car guys that waste a shit ton of money advertising to the general public. And if it actually works, the people at the business know less about that advertisement than the people that are there to try to buy the car. So, I have a vision where we don't ever spend money without knowing that we can execute against it in case it actually works. So that's kind of where, to your point, we're trying to get out in front, use technology. The industry, since I've been in it, has talked about how many dollars can equal how many leads, and where can you most effectively give a business opportunities. And I'll take half the opportunities if I know exactly how my team is going to convert on every opportunity that we gain. And I'll show you which of those models is going to be a hell of a lot more profitable. But you got to give people a tool by which to do that doesn't make them stop fighting the fire in order to learn how to properly aim the hose. And that's what we think we're zeroing in on.
Yeah. Well, to the point about the half the number of opportunities to see where they convert, and really even better is to see where the break points are, because if you can learn what's happening there, then you're able to fix those things if you don't know what's happening there. So ultimately, I mean, what you're talking about, again, I mean, we're focusing on automotive because that's kind of where you're in on, but these aren't unique problems just automotive, right? This is something, I was talking to somebody recently in real estate, and they have an internal training program, and the CEO's involved and the brand strategist is involved, and this is, they're trying to train 300 to 400 real estate agents. And if they've already got the curriculum, this is a good tool to sort of help them to understand who's actually looking at that and how well that they're mentally onboarding that and using that. And, just from so there's probably a lot of other applications that we could come up with really quickly on other industries that would benefit here.
Real estate is phenomenal. House list for $399, you offer $350 cash close in 10 days. Opposing agent says, well, my client thinks their property is worth $399, and the last 3 properties on the street sold for $399. What does a young real estate agent say at that point? I don't know. and they don't know if they're not trained. But if they learn to say, well, interest rates are double than they were for all of those comps. It may not appraise for that. It's going to take you 2 weeks to get the appraisal. Does your buyer have financing? Because now, even if they're a qualified buyer, that's another 2 weeks. Lots of things can happen in those 2 weeks. So, not saying that your comps are wrong. You might want to let your buyer know that if everything goes well, they're 45 days out from closing no matter what. And this problem could be solved in 10 days on a cash deal. I've got to practice that a couple times before I'm going to say that when it matters, which is in the moment. And that's just a really bad, I'm not a realtor example. If we can create a video using our iPhone or our Galaxy and say, if somebody tells you in this scenario, always remember, talk about the time that it takes to get a house appraised, talk about the time that it takes to get financing secured, and talk about the value of time, how many days you're going to have to keep your house clean and your dog at the kennel. So in case somebody wants to see your house, and that level of convenience. And always remember, there's nothing like a cash offer that can close in 10 days. And the time that I can create that video and deploy that to 300 real estate agents, give them all 5 days to absorb that and then say it back to me. What I'm going to find out in about 3 days is which of those agents care enough to actually try that on for size. But more importantly, which of their managers are actually making sure that they see the value in doing so.
Yeah.
And instantly give them the feedback that their word tracks and their practice is culturally a benefit of them working for the agency that they work for. Or maybe that agency sees that the marketing firm that they chose providing that level of conversion technology as a value add to that giant real estate business that has over 300 agents. Now I got a value add and a conversion tool that's going to tell me who really gives a shit and who doesn't. Of the ones that do, are they practicing? Here's the scary part, though. It puts the onus on the person that makes the decision that would make them more money to be mindful of what content would make their team better and actually put forth the effort to basically spend the same amount of time on their phone that they're already spending, and probably spend the same amount of time making or watching videos that they're already spending, just doing it to make their business better than the competition.
Yeah. Well, there's two things in that too, though. One is one of the things that a real estate company cannot control is inventory, right? The number of houses that are going on and off the market. However, the more agents they have, the more inventory they're going to have, because that's more sellers agents. So using this as a recruiting tool in terms of, hey, when you come here, we're going to actually train you, and we're holding our managers accountable for training you and making sure that you're just not given a desk and a phone and said, go to work. We're actually going to give you the tools to succeed, right? So that's when you're recruiting against what everyone else is selling the exact same deal, essentially the same percentage. It's a commodity at that point. So what are you going to do differently? So that's one thing. And the second thing is those 300 agents, the better that they know how to market themselves and learning how to do all of the social media pieces and the website pieces and making sure that their brand is consistent with the brand of the brokerage and all of those things coming together. That's where your marketing agency can come in and help you and create that content around that and do those training elements as well. So there's a huge opportunity, and we're just talking about real estate. That's a pretty big piece, and 300, to be honest with you, is actually I wouldn't say it's a small agency, but that's not like a really, really big agency.
In a post-COVID environment where remote is more accepted than it's ever been, and it's not going back, how do we get people who all benefit from properly executing, whether it be word tracks or emanating the culture that a company hopes that its frontline people will emanate to current and potential customers? How do we make them feel connected? How do we get them confident and comfortable in practicing without dragging them to a virtual meeting, even worse, a live meeting? Even if we do have a great live meeting, what happens after the live meeting? I can be Joe Verdi and I can get the hair on your arms standing tall after a training session. I still have zero way to determine whether or not any of it sunk in or if you ever actually practiced it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So, and I love when you talk about the marketing agency, because the first marketing firm that looks at clients and says, I'm not going to accept you or your money if you're not willing to use the platform that we provide, whether it's at a cost or not, to make sure that your team, your organization is the most properly onboarded, feels most connected to your brand, your mission statement, and the best attributes of your best people, and can prove that they practice every once in a while. Because I don't want bad clients. I don't have time. I don't have time to waste on clients who are going to call me in 6 months and tell me that my marketing's not working, when we all know that you guys haven't done a damn thing to get any better on your side. But it's always easy to blame the money. It's always easy to blame. You know what? If we'd had a dog in the commercial, we'd have sold more whatevers. No, if our people would have actually practiced what we preach and felt like they were part of the umbrella, because every time they woke up, one of the first things they did was hit my organization or my value add marketing agency's app and do a little bit of work that led to a lot of confidence. We wouldn't have conversations about how many leads are you getting me. We'd have conversations about, oh my God, how much more content can Atomic create for me? Because if Atomic's in the business of creating content anyways, you'd be happy to turn those cameras on and create some training content as a value add for your customers if you knew they were using that content to go be the very best in their industry in a local market. I'm telling you, that's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon. And I can't wait to see who grabs onto that.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you guys, are there any other industries where you're like, yeah, this is a perfect fit? As we're having this conversation, I'm kind of like half thinking about anybody else that it would fit for.
Yeah. So we just had a company that owns 30 fitness clubs on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And their biggest problem is they're trying to get 30 individual fitness centers to sign people up the same way, onboard them the same way, teach them about all the amenities and the do's and don'ts of their fitness centers the same way, certify new trainers the same way.
Yeah.
And they've just adopted the technology because they've realized that this is the most efficient way to do that. And now they're going to go in a hole for the next 3 months, and they're going to build content, because they know if the content's ready to go, that everybody that works the front desk will know how to answer the phone the same way, how to handle issues the same way. Everybody who's an entry-level trainer will be certified in the right things the same way. And then what they can do is they can use the instant content creation feature of the technology to look at reporting, say on a biweekly basis, and say, for those of you who were down in membership last week, we're going to focus on this one thing that can help you convert. Here's the message. Here's how you should do it. Everybody take some time to think about this, and in your own words, relay to us how you can get better. Oh, by the way, here are some video resources in case you need some inspiration. I can send an email to that regard. I can post a video on YouTube to that regard. But until I give those people who stand to benefit from performing better an environment where they have to process it through their ears and have it escape their lips, they don't have the confidence to deliver that message, nor do they ever have the practice to get good at it. And we've created that. So any real franchise model, Gail, where you have intellectual knowledge up here that needs to be distributed at scale without wasting anybody's time, where they can kind of go off into a corner and realize how bad they are at saying that the first time. Yeah, exactly. Just realizing that makes me better than you. Yeah. And if I try it again and get a little smoother the second time, by the third time, I'm waiting for somebody to come in and ask me that question, because instead of looking like a deer in headlights and embarrassing myself, even if I trip over it and get to the point, the customer is going to see care, concern and a little bit of confidence, which is going to increase my conversion. So we've got body shops using it. We've got car dealerships using it. We've got the fitness industry using it. There's a little company out there called Lululemon that hires 18 to 30-year-old, mostly young ladies, to talk intelligently about new products that are sexy and have unique fabric. Well, in the Lululemon locations, they don't have jump on the internet and get smart when a customer asks you a question. They have people with cell phones tucked in their leggings who, if they had a video library shot to them every Tuesday and they could explain why the new jogger was better, that they could be training thousands of sales associates on their products real time in minutes of day. And companies like this are starting to look at new mobile technologies that incorporate role play and management supervision, because the old LMS space is like, here's the Millennium Falcon, get in and know what all these instruments mean and fly it.
Yeah. Well, and even in that, that regard is just even something as small as, hey guys, we want to push what, the black Bella pants for the rest of this week. This is why you want to push it. This is what the deal is. We need to get that moving. Like something as simple that disseminates out to your entire, sales force like that. It is such a big deal. And if it's in conjunction with any other ads that you're running along with it, then when the first person walks in and says, hey, I want to get the Bella pant, they're like, no, you actually want this pant over here instead, because I like this one better, because they just didn't know the difference, right?
1,000%. It's going to help convert. And we've even adapted the technology so that any of the media that goes into building either an instant or a more developed learning program, there's a resource in the application called the Vault, which means I can pull out my phone, open the app, go to the Vault, type in Bella Pant, and there's the video that was used for my training, that if I just want to show the customer or hit the share button and text that to the customer, I've even got the crutch in case I need it. Bella Pant, video on why they should buy it. How about that? And we didn't think of that, by the way. I wish we were that good. The market said, wow, we got something here. It'd be great if we could take some of the learning material and just have it right here in our holster in case we need to pick it up and fire in a moment where we were either confused or needed instant recall. So we can either try to get people to put their phones down in the workplace and realize that we're never going to win that battle.
Never.
Or we can get over ourselves and have it be the best tool and make it feel like TikTok, because if we don't, somebody else will.
That's right. Well, and I don't think there's any shame in saying somebody else came up with that idea, because all the best artists are thieves, right? And if you're not asking your customers, what do you like about this? What do you not like about it? Then you're missing a huge opportunity to iterate and to design something better than you've got right now. So I think that's a no-brainer for that.
What we did with that technology is we said, we don't care if anybody ever knows who built the technology. We want to build a technology that the business who understands how valuable this can be to either them or the clients that they serve can deploy it under their logo on the app in the Google Play Store. So, for instance, Matrix uses that technology to be a better trade school, a better trader of the industry, and make our value proposition better than our competition. An agency like Atomic could say, hey, all Atomic clients, part of the reason you do a business with Atomic is you get the Atomic app for X amount of your employees. And oh, by the way, if that business really gets good and your client is Realty South and they realize how much better the Atomic app is making their business, if at some point they want to go all in and be providing their people the Realty South app,
yep,
we've built a model that not only can do that instantaneously, but it can allow someone at the Atomic level to monetize that value add proposition if they want to get into the business of monetizing that white labeled scenario too. So everybody kind of looks at it a little different, but this is a model that is sort of it's kind of like AI. It's self-evolving, and we're just trying to keep up with how it goes. But the one thing that we have found out for sure is that 80% of any market already tuned out, and they're not going to do anything different.
Right.
But
Well, it's
the 20% of
Pareto's
people,
theorem, right?
yeah, the 20% of people who realize that the best way for their product to catch on is by solving another problem for their customers. Those are the innovators. And in the world that we live in, there's not a business who doesn't have the problem of, I need more people better trained, more efficiently for less money.
Well, that's cool. That really is. I mean, it's a big problem to solve. And it's ubiquitous. I mean, everybody at every level is going to have some version of this problem. And I think your firehouse analogy is pretty much right on. Like as soon as you decide to start teaching somebody how to spray the water, it's the bells ring, and it happens. If it seems to happen if you're a one person business or you're a 100 person business, it's sort of similar. So anything that can help streamline that and make it easier and give you some visibility as to the effectiveness, the efficacy of the training even just happening is a huge win. I mean, it's not a 1+1 scenario there. It's sort of like that's where 1+1 equals 20 in this case. It's such a better version than what you have now, which is you're in a lot of cases you're left on your own to do your own training, and then you're right, like you get excited about it, but then when you try to go implement it, you're just back in the grind of where you were before.
You need the support and engagement of the people that you look to from a supervisor or management standpoint to guide you through those tough times or through those learning curves. And if we don't give those people a really quick and easy and almost cheap way to stay involved in the effort that you're making to better yourself, then it's probably not happening as often as it should. And we live in a world where everybody expects to get everything right now, and if they don't, they're moving on.
Yeah,
We have to allow people to onboard and continue in their career with that same mentality, or somebody else is going to figure that out.
yeah, for sure. So so kind of talking about training, what kind of training do you have time to do for yourself? What learning opportunities do you have for yourself these days?
It's a great question. The only way I can answer that honestly is I'm talking to the market all day, every day. And so if I'm answering that question honestly, the training that I'm getting right now is really understanding what the real obstacles are when it comes to businesses that aren't Google, onboarding, retaining, and growing the next generation. How are they onboarding that freshman class, getting them to be successful in the JV team so that they can replace these varsity guys that are graduating and retiring. So there's not a big playbook for what we do.
Right.
I operate best in that scenario. It would probably drive some people to insanity, and I'm fortunate to have people around me and backing that afford me to do that. But it's a hell of a question, because if there were training that I could take to do this, other than trying to listen to as many people who are trying to fight the same fight that we are, I'd be all over it. And I can tell you that if I could just do it at night on my phone before I went to bed instead of watching whatever junk I'm watching, I'd take that time to do it.
This is true. There's a so you brought up Google, which is funny, and I'm looking something up as I'm talking to you about it. But I read this book. When I say read, by the way, I listened to a book, but I just say I read it. Yeah. But the guy's name is Tony Fadell, and the book's called Build. And this guy's had a blessed career. He was on the team that developed the iPhone, and he, I think, invented Nest, or at least was the lead of the company that created Nest and sold it to Google. So he's done a couple things. But one of the things in there was about, you're talking about retention, and Google, created that big incredible campus to try to retain people and all this stuff. And so he's got this chapter in his book called "Fuck Massages," and it's about all these extra benefits that they try to give to people to keep them in the company. And I need to go back and listen to it again based on this conversation, and because I know he was talking about growing people and training people, but I want to go back and listen to it again. But anyways, I don't think it's unique to any industry, right? Because I mean, those tech industries are cannibalizing each other, like Facebook stealing from. I mean, essentially, the reason why Threads exists is because Elon Musk ran off all of his engineers, and they all got hired by Meta, and that's why Threads is what it is, because that's just a Twitter. He took all the Twitter engineers and they built that, and they launched it that quickly because they already knew how to do all that stuff. That whole place would suffer from the same thing. Like this honestly, I get calls from Google Ads people, and it's gotten to be a joke because I just have to ask them a couple questions. One, have you ever run a Google Ads account with your own money? And two is, have you ever run a Google Ads account with someone else's money? I mean, had to deal with them. And then three, yeah. And then three is, do you know anything about the client you're calling me about right now? Do you know anything about their business, what they do? Any of these questions? Because if you can't answer yes to any of those, this conversation's over with. So to have someone that's calling from the Google Ads team to advise me on how to run a campaign, having none of that experience, is a joke. And they have these people constantly coming in and out of this program, and simple training on some of those basic things, running their own campaigns, doing some of those kind of things, and having answered those questions would help that ecosystem to be so much better than it is. So I don't think even companies of that size are doing the things they should be doing, as basic as how to say the right things when you're talking to a customer and how to have the experience and the research when you go into it.
Yeah, the e-learning space is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's a lot of big incumbents who gobble up the competition, grab a couple feature sets, and the reality is that all the information required to be successful on the planet is accessible for free in short form video on YouTube.
You just got to go look for it. What is that Good Will Hunting, when he's talking to the guy in the bar that's talking to the girl, and he goes, the sad part is in a few years, you're going to realize that you spent $100,000 on an education that you could have got for $150 in late fees.
Perfect analogy. So the information being out there doesn't get it. You can't go to a four-year university, drop 60 to 100 grand on a degree, and know that you're going to be qualified to go earn a reasonable living in today's economy. We talk about that a lot. What we don't talk about a lot is you can't run a company where you go hire those people that have that degree and have any level of confidence that they're going to be even remotely productive for you. And in a world where traditional education's taking some things right now, and we're having this shift from the model that we grew up in, businesses that are going to be successful are going to have to figure out how to onboard, train, and certify their own people and not rely on traditional ed. And the only way they're going to do that is by giving their people the ability to work and learn in a cadence and a framework that is part of the job and is valuable at every interval. Learn something, apply it. Learn something, apply it. Learn something, apply it. Take what didn't work, react to that, train on it, apply it. It's going to require businesses to think differently about what works, which is going to have to force them to analyze their business more. Mm-hmm. Communicate effectively the least common denominator that will affect the greatest common factor of employees, and repeat in a way where the employee doesn't feel like it gobbles up all of their bandwidth. The businesses that figure that out the fastest are going to destroy their competition. And we hope to be a leader in some tiny sector of that effort in the little area that we can affect.
Well, anybody that's ever reached their goals, they always said that they just wish they would have set their goals a little bit higher. Give yourself a little more credit, right?
Yeah, or started doing a couple things that weren't that complicated a little sooner, right? When we launched this technology, Gail, it was funny. We thought that it was going to be difficult for the people that were getting the information from the tech to want to role play and rehearse. And what we realized, the hardest part was getting the people who paid for the technology to realize that they had to aggregate the information that they wish their people were using and executing against better and lay it down on video in a sequence and then actually deploy it and inspect what they were expecting. That's the bigger hurdle. That's the 80% of the people that won't really do the work. But the 20% of the people that realize we don't have to be any smarter. We just have to execute the old stuff in small bites more often and hold ourselves accountable to making sure that everybody's as passionate about getting better as we are and repeat. It's not complicated. It's simple, but a lot of meat on the bone for the people that are actually going to do that to gain some crazy market share.
Right. Well, and to your point, once you create a training program, can you monetize that training program and use that in another way? So you create it once, anybody could use it as long as they're not competing directly with you or directly with your clients. Why not use it?
If let's say an agency like yours decides to work in collaboration with a client who has good knowledge to share, you dedicate the resources to creating a library of content for them. If it's done on their dime with their people and their intellectual property, then they should hold that near and dear to their organization. If they agree to let you create that content and you're able to go out and license the content that they helped you create to their competition, and hell, I don't care if it's in the same market. And here's why I don't care. Because their competition is probably going to buy it, and 80% of the time they ain't going to do anything with it anyway.
Right.
So the libraries of meaningful content are only meaningful if there's a distribution methodology that holds people accountable and gives the people that are willing to do the work the ability to do it simply. Because the great news is most of them won't. The sad news is most of them won't. You just got to decide who you are. And that's what I mean by my vision of the successful agency is the one that interviews the potential client instead of the other way around.
Right. Which is that's something that it is, I think, is evolving a lot in the agency world as it is, too, is it's not so much a niche that you want to be in. It's the type of person that you want to work with, because you end up spending your time, and this is something recently for us, like we decided to work with someone at a much lower rate than we normally would have, doing just a portion of what we believed we should be doing, because we're like, what, let's help this person out. And it ended up being a complete shit show. And at the end of the day, it wasn't even, we ended up spending all this time with someone who didn't want to do the work to begin with, or didn't want to invest the time and energy and resources to actually be successful. And it ended up just being a waste for everyone. And you don't think about how much that small guy can take you away from the clients that you really want to be helping on a day-to-day basis. So it always really should be, agencies should be interviewing their customers to be the right type of customers and that want to invest in growth. And training is a big piece of that. And I've got a meeting next week with someone on another podcast that I'm talking about working from the inside out. right? And my analogy to this has always been that I can go and spend, 2 to 3 grand on some badass carbon fiber hoops, right? Wheels for my mountain bike. They'll be light, they'll be strong, be great. Or I could just maybe like lose 5 or 10 pounds and it'll be a hell of a lot cheaper. It'll give me a much longer, a much better long term benefit than this. And that's working, what are the small things we can do from the inside, working our way out before we just spend a bunch of money on whatever type of ads that we want to have to come back to a broken system, right? You get all these people to come to your website or your shop and people don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, and while you're scrolling through the carbon fiber wheels on bikes.com, you order the 22-ounce IPA and the double cheeseburger.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's a strategy, right? But it's just like, how can you create long-term growth? What are the small things that are going to make the biggest impact? And that's what we all should be looking to do. And training is a piece of that, right? It's a relatively small lift and it's a relatively inexpensive thing for the impact that it returns for you.
If you can help them get over the fear of content, and if you know enough about their industry to ask them, can you identify 3 KPIs that if you improve them would make a big financial impact in your business? And you can get them to quantify what pick a number, 20% improvement in 3 KPIs would mean. Let me give you a real case scenario. We went to a dealer group and we said our technology, including the content that we provide for an operation your size, is $9.95 a month. They said, no, man, that's too expensive. I can get a learning management system off the shelf for $1 per user per month, and we've only got 37 employees. And I said, so you're saying it's too much? I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, if ours was free, what 3 metrics do you need to move to make the kind of money that you want to make? And I got a dumb look. I'm like, okay, let's try this. If you had 100 customers come in your business, what percentage of the time do you sell them tires? And what percentage of the time would you like to sell them tires if you were the best of the best? I don't know. Okay. Fast forward to make this story shorter. If they just got to average, they would have sold enough tires to generate another $12,000 a month. And if I was to ask them how they would get from shitty to just average, I wouldn't have had to work too hard to get them to eventually say, we either need all new humans that are properly trained, or we just need to train our humans to be a little bit better than average. Right. So if we agree that a little bit of training is the only way to get you to make $12,000 more a month, and that's not worth $11,000 a month, then thank you for not letting me fall into the trap of working too hard to earn your business.
And by the way, if you could do it for $37, why aren't you doing it?
Thank you. But I don't have the patience to even go that far. And well, I'm going to say that next time because it'll be fun. So when you get into this conversation, if anybody has listened to this level of the podcast, here's the best advice I have. If anybody ever looks at you from an agency or from a training proposition perspective and starts to talk about cost, and you don't say, well, time out. If you got better at 2 things, how much better would you like to be? And what would the financial impact on your business be if you did 50% of that? And they can't answer that question, or even better, if they can, then your next answer is going to be, you don't give 2 shits what I charge you, as long as the second number outruns the first number, because then we're going to go attack 6 more KPIs and the cost doesn't change. Guess what percentage of businesses are capable of handling that conversation? 20%.
It's exactly right. It works out every time.
Yeah.
It works out every time. All right. No, I love that. Actually, I think figuring out how to have that conversation and ask that question, which is, what are the things that are going to financially impact your business and what needs to happen, right? Whatever it is, like I need to build, 20 more houses this year to get, okay, well, what's the number for that? What's that going to be for you? And if we're going to get 50% of the way there, what are all the things that need to happen? And I think that's getting them in that conversation is a much better place than how much is this going to cost.
And you can always trick a business owner, especially small to medium sized business owner, into admitting that they have the answer. Mm-hmm. In most of the cases, that answer is, well, if they were more like me, okay, well, what 4 things are you better at than all these employees that you're bitching about? And let's quantify the value of your expertise in terms of productivity. And we're going to come up with an opportunity of improvement number if we can get them to be half as good as you.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about what my product costs. So when you ask me what my training product costs, I'll say, I don't know, but we're going to assume it costs $1. And we're going to do some math. And then when I tell you it costs $1,000, you're still going to be winning so big that the conversation is going to be over and you're going to say, when do we start?
That's right.
So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to see who catches on to this stuff. What really is fun is when you find a business owner that's not afraid to go down the road and who's not afraid to challenge their people. Yeah, this is going to be a little scary. Transparency can be frightening. Accountability is something that everybody agrees needs to happen. Nobody really wants.
Yeah. Yes. That this is a true statement, is that it's good. It's so good for you, but that's probably the scariest thing for any person at any level, is becoming accountable to someone else's inspection of the quality and quantity of your work. It's a tough thing.
And think about what you just said. You said that from a perspective of, what is my supervisor going to think of my ability to deliver this information properly? What we never expected was the first and even greater fear point is when the supervisor looks in the mirror and says, shit, what the hell do I have to teach my employees to be better today? And am I willing or able to put that on video so they have the chance to consume it and be as good as me? And that was the bottleneck that we didn't expect. Now, the good news is, from your perspective, if part of a marketing firm's offering is to help them over that hump, spend enough time with them to say, well, it sounds to me like these are 3 initiatives that would really help your business. Why don't we make life easy on you and help you create some content against those 3 initiatives so you don't have to think about that fear point for the next 90 days? And we'll just watch your people practice while you're busy putting out fires, and we'll see in 90 days how many more tires you're selling. You don't have to move those tire sales very much to make your product valuable, and then the wheels start turning.